right now, and it's pretty much a waiting game because there's no cameras or phones. We have another reporter who's been outside that ICE detention facility and said it's really chaos going inside that courtroom because over a dozen of his supporters showed up. They said they were there till 6 a.m. just demanding to get inside. Mahmoud Khalil has been held at this ICE detention facility here in Jena, Louisiana for about more than a month since he was arrested in New York City. The government arguing that Mahmoud Khalil should be deported under an immigration law that allows the Secretary of State to deport aliens considered a threat to U.S. foreign policy. Now, the Department of Homeland Security had to submit evidence proving this. In a two-page memo, Rubio argued that feds can deport Khalil for, quote, participating in anti-Semitic protests and disruptive activities, which fosters a hostile environment for Jewish students in the United States. Well, Khalil's attorneys, they claim this violates his freedom of speech.
Well, we try to establish that people like Mahmoud have a constitutional right to speak out in this country, and they should not be, the government should not be using this really bogus statute saying it's against U.S. foreign policy interests.
And the State Department has revoked over 300 student visas so far. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that student visas are a privilege. If you come into this country as a student, the government expects you to go to class and study, not vandalize campuses across the country. His supporters, Martha, they plan to hold a press conference around 3:30 Eastern time. Of course, that could change depending on when this hearing ends, but we're by our phones right now, just waiting for that.
My work is easy.
Some sort of varying arguments on their reasoning to deport Khalil. What is your take on how the judge may be approaching this at this hour?
Well, the administration has not made it easy for this judge. I'm surprised by that two-page letter because there is a concrete basis to deport Khalil if you simply establish what was originally alleged, that he participated in a protest that involved property damage and trespass and other criminal acts. That's conduct. That doesn't go to the content of his speech, and they can clearly remove him for that. The letter instead focuses more on his views, and that's putting it in a very difficult light for this judge and balancing what are legitimate free speech concerns against the power of the administration. Now, where his counsel, I think, is going to have a hard time is, as you just heard, they said, we don't think this statute should be used. Well, the statute is going to be used, and this immigration judge is not going to say it can't be used. And that statute gives Secretary Rubio sweeping authority. And it's not clear how much a judge, let alone an immigration judge, can question the judgment of the Secretary of State underneath that statute once he's issued this type of declaration.
Yeah, you know, another thing that I was looking at today is the green card holder rights, because it's interesting that this ends up in the immigration court because the State Department has made the argument that they can remove him for conduct, as you just pointed out. Now, he's a green card holder. And he is here sort of, you know, at the permission of the United States government. But is anti-Semitism, promoting anti-Semitism on campus and essentially preventing Jewish students from their right to go to class, is that hate crime? And can hate crime be the issue here that could have him removed for his green card?
Well, that's an excellent question. And as you can tell in that language, there's a lot of subjectivity, which is what his counsel has said that should concern the court. And the letter says that this could be otherwise lawful conduct, but the secretary can still have you deported for it. I'm surprised by that framing because it makes me think that they're using this case to go for the three-point shot, that they want to use this case to establish strong precedent in other cases that will be based on not as developed records. So we'll have to see how this judge reacts to to all of this, they did not produce the type of evidence that some of us were expecting, some concrete ties of what Khalil knew about and directed the protest itself, that after all resulted in citations, after all were unlawful. That seems the clearest and easiest basis. I think the administration wants to establish a broader principle here to say, you might not like this law, but it gives Secretary Rubio sweeping authority, and we just used it.
Yeah. So
by one of Mahmoud Khalil's lawyers, Diala Shamas. She is the senior staff attorney at the Center for Constitutional Rights and attended Khalil's hearing virtually today. Diala, thank you so much for joining Top Story tonight. We understand your client does intend to file an appeal. Walk us through the next steps for you and your client.
Thank you for having me. So today in court, it was very clear that our client is not going to get a fair hearing. Today was not a fair hearing. It was, in many ways, the epitome of lack of due process, as Mahmoud himself said in a beautiful statement at the end of the hearing, where he affirmed that he did not have due process. Clearly, what we witnessed, I read, clearly what we witnessed today, neither of these principles were present today or in this whole process. This is exactly why the Trump administration has sent me to this court 1,000 miles away from my family. I just hope that the urgency that you deemed fit for me are afforded to the hundreds of others who have been here without a hearing for months. The fight is not over. Mahmoud and the entire legal team will continue to fight this. Now, there are some next steps in the immigration court. There's some relief that's available to him. But we are also looking to federal court, where we believe the court should be hearing Mahmoud's constitutional claims. Remember that the reason Mahmoud was picked up, whisked away at night from his now 9 months pregnant wife, is because of his speech. It's because of his advocacy. And in the Department of State's own 2-page determination, as they confirm, it's because of his beliefs. It's his beliefs of support for Palestinian freedom, support for Palestinian rights, his protesting the Israeli genocide in Gaza, the Israeli military assault in Gaza. There are serious constitutional questions that should trouble all of us. And what we saw today in immigration court was a judge that did not want to hear any of that. She simply rubber-stamped this 2-page determination saying that she didn't need to look beyond it, that a simple pro forma determination by Secretary Rubio saying that Mahmoud Khalil's beliefs would compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest is sufficient to find him removable.